Hello, everybody. This is the Cincinnati Herald Podcast. I'm your host, John Alexander Reese, digital editor of the Cincinnati Herald. If you don't know, the Cincinnati Herald has been around since 1955 and is the largest African American newspaper in the greater Cincinnati area. And today, my guests are co-host and media consultant of the Cincinnati Herald, Andrea Carter. How you doing today, Andrea?
Hey, John. I'm doing just well today. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. We also have circulation director of the Cincinnati Herald, Wade Lacey Sr. How you doing today, Wade?
Hello, John. It's always good to see you this evening.
Good, good. And our special guest, Keizayla Fambro, who is the manager of the upcoming Center for Closing the Health Gap Health Expo. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, and thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for coming on. So, before we talk about the upcoming Center for Closing the Health Gap Health Expo, let's talk about some news topics. And our first topic of the day is the death of Marjorie Parham. Mrs. Marjorie Parham, publisher emerita of the Cincinnati Herald and widow of founder Gerald Porter, passed peacefully in her sleep on Wednesday, April 14th. She was 103 years old. In 1954, Mrs. Parham married Gerald Porter and he founded the Cincinnati Herald, a weekly African American newspaper, in 1955. The company opened a Dayton office and Mrs. Parham began running that office in 1961. In 1963, Gerald Porter was in a car accident. He was taken to one hospital, which refused to treat him because he was Black, as stated to her by one of the nurses. Mr. Porter then was transported to another hospital, but by the time he reached the second hospital, it was too late and Mr. Porter died. Rather than shut down the newspapers, Mrs. Parham jumped in to save the business. She closed the Dayton office and then called the White House to ask if her other son could be discharged from the Army so that he could help her run the Cincinnati Herald. Bill Spillers was sent home. He and his mother ran the Cincinnati Herald until it was purchased by Sesh Communications in 1996. Andrea, what are your thoughts on the passing of Mrs. Parham?
It was a shock when she finally passed. I had a good relationship with her. She gave me my first job. Actually, she gave me my first internship in the news industry, and later she hired me full time for the Herald before I moved on to a newspaper in New Jersey in '92. It was just sad because she was a wonderful woman. She was a wonderful role model. She was a tough businesswoman. She had high standards, but she always believed in being there for the Black community and speaking up for the Black community as much as possible. And she was a wonderful teacher, especially for news, about getting it right, getting to the truth, and making sure that even if they're not willing to talk to you, you find a way to get the information and never be afraid to ask a question or be the only in the room to ask a question. So I'm going to miss her a lot. But people should continue to remember her because she was a wonderful role model for women.
Indeed. Wade, your thoughts on the passing of Mrs. Parham?
Well, it's very sad to see her go. As we get older, we understand that it's going to happen, but when it does happen, it's always a sad moment. I think she was 103 years old. I think she was been very active up until she was around 90. I think she was still playing golf at that time. She's an icon in the newspaper industry. She's very well thought of all around the country. The members of the NNPA, they knew her well. I remember she had got a appointment from Governor Rhodes back in the day. So she had a lot of different roles to fill. But when you think of the newspaper industry, Marjorie Parham, she's one of those names that stands out amongst others. So sorry to see her go.
Yes, definitely. And our next topic is the conclusion of the Derek Chauvin murder trial. Across America, the Black community experienced a sense of relief and that justice prevailed with the conviction of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin in the murder of George Floyd. The unanimous jury convicted Chauvin of third-degree murder, second-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. Blacks in America experienced a range of emotions when the verdict was read, with some shouting for joy, some experiencing disbelief, and many felt an overwhelming sense of relief that justice prevailed in the May 2020 murder of George Floyd. Andrea, your thoughts on this story?
It was a shock, disbelief. unbelievable that the Black community for once have experienced justice for an act that should not have occurred by a police officer. I know when writing our story yesterday for the paper, it was more about what is the next step? Where do we go from here? Yes, we got justice for George Floyd, but there are so many others who have not obtained justice for excessive use of force, and those officers have either been either have been disciplined, or charges were dropped against them, or no charges pressed against them. So the work to continue to get an equal balance between police and the Black community continues, because until the day a Black person can walk away from a traffic stop the same way a non-white person can walk away from a traffic stop, that's the day when we'll have equal justice, at least in policing. Not to say that there aren't good police officers, I think there are, but Derek Chauvin, as a representation of, I would say, police departments have been put on notice that follow the lead of what the Minneapolis Police Department did, is not so much put the police department on trial, but put the person and their actions on trial. And I think we'll have a better relationship with folks if that is done, because not everyone is going to work against a police department, because we need police. Even down in the Black community right now, when people ask what they want to see more in the community, they'll say more police. So it's a continuous working relationship, but one has to work more than the other.
Yes, definitely. Wade, your thoughts on this story?
I'm glad Andrea Carter said what she said, because this trial, this verdict was not a anti-police verdict or trial. It was a trial about getting justice for a person, an individual, the Black community as a whole, when it comes to the way we are treated by police officers. I don't see it as justice being served. I don't think we'll have justice in this instance until the police force as a whole, nationwide, come to an understanding that this type of actions is criminal, and that they will actually be charged for their criminal activity. They will be held accountable. And once, as a nation, that feeling, that thought, that message is received by everyone, then we will have the justice. In this case, it's like, I guess Ms. Carter said, this was more like a journey point. This was just a first step. And so the justice hasn't been served. It won't be served until we are treated as everyone else.
And now, our last story of the day, which is about the Columbus police shooting of Ma'Khia Bryant. And at the time of the recording of this podcast, this is still a developing story, so there may be new details that emerge later. The fatal police shooting of Ma'Khia Bryant, a Black teenager seen on video charging at two people with a knife, came within minutes of the verdict in George Floyd's killing, causing outrage by some over the continued use of lethal force by Columbus police. Officials with the Columbus Division of Police released footage of the shooting Tuesday night, just hours after it happened, a departure from protocol as the force faces immense scrutiny from the public following a series of recent high-profile police killings that have led to clashes. Andrea, your thoughts on this developing story?
I'm still unsure of what happened. I mean, the victim called the police for help, and she ended up dead. I'm still unclear of the circumstances of what led from her needing help to her dying. But at the same time, I'm saddened by it, but not surprised, because the Columbus Police Department has gone through a number of issues over this past year, and even this year, of where they have had accusations of excessive use of force by police, where people have either ended up injured or dying. I think it was more dying than injured. And I think there is a systemic problem within the Columbus Police Department, because if you keep seeing the same action over and over again with a particular community, you have a problem and it's not getting through to your officers that they are not operating at the best safe manner of that community in policing them. I think it's a shame and something needs to be done because this is the police department that polices the state capitol. How are we going to feel safe going to the state capitol when we need to see our representative if they can't even guarantee the safety of the residents?
Wade, your thoughts on the story?
I haven't seen the video, but I understand she had called the police for protection herself. And so, like I said, I haven't seen the video. I don't know if she was in the act of stabbing someone at the time, or if she had a knife and she was going after someone, which makes me wonder what did the police say or do? Because from what I'm getting without seeing the video, it's like they immediately came out and saw her with a knife and shot her. One of the questions that arises from this is that what does the governor say with the stand your ground law that was passed recently? Where do we go from here?
Yes, it is a very complicated and definitely very tragic situation. So those are the main news stories of the day. And now I want to hand it over to Keizayla Fambro, who's going to talk about the upcoming Center for Closing the Health Gap Health Expo.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. Again, my name is Keizayla Fambro, and I am so excited to serve as the manager of the 17th Annual Health Expo this year. The Health Expo is the Health Gaps annual event that brings health access directly to Cincinnati community. This free event allows attendees to take advantage of healthy lifestyle information, healthy food and fitness, as well as enjoy local and national entertainment. Due to the pandemic, this year's Health Expo will take place virtually. This event takes place Saturday, that is in 2 days, April 24th, 2021 from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. This event can be accessed directly in the palm of your hands. The event will feature a main stage that includes fitness demonstrations that are hosted by Denise and Starlight Fitness, along with musical entertainment such as Urban Mystique and Vondale Bachelor. We will also have vendor exhibitor booths, food and fitness, healthy lifestyle, and children's health information. For more information about this virtual event, including how to get registered, who is involved, our amazing partners and sponsors, our stage lineup, times, and prizes, you can go to www.wemustsafeus.com. And although this event is taking place virtually, the Health Gap, along with the hospital systems, have decided to offer vaccines to our community. We know with the new variants spreading and cases spiking that vaccination is the best way to protect our communities. So residents 16 and up can participate in these vaccines. And walk-ins are welcome. You can register at www.wemustsafeus.com. The site is very easy to navigate. Those vaccines will take place this Saturday at 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. at Music Hall. I encourage you and everyone to register. Register for the virtual event, register for the vaccine, and get your vaccine. And I look forward to seeing you virtually at the Health Expo.
That's great. That's wonderful. But I do want to ask you a question about the Health Expo in general. What was the biggest challenge from converting it to a virtual event from just a in-person event?
So the biggest challenge is it's never been done before. I think that was the biggest one. It's just getting everything that's offered in person, from the live touches of like being able to go and experience a vendor booth and being able to talk to someone, get health screenings, and just enjoy community. That was the biggest thing of like trying to put that in a virtual space. We've worked with Easily Blessed group, who were able to bring that type of vision to a virtual platform. So he did the best he could, and I think he's done an amazing job. The site where you will experience the expo is very easily able to navigate, but you also have some sense of community that you would have at a normal in-person health expo event. I'm not sure if you've ever attended one, but they are an amazing event filled with a lot of members of our community where we could just come together and be connected. So I think this virtual platform has a little bit of that, but it also is a challenge because we are not in person.
Well, that definitely sounds fantastic. And I will make sure to put all of the information down in the comment section below so people can check out this great virtual event. And here's hoping we can get that event back to in person next year. That's why everyone needs to get their vaccines and everything, reach herd immunity.
Absolutely, I agree.
Okay, and coming up next, we are talking to Royce Sutton, the Senior Vice President of Fifth Third Bank. He was on here a couple weeks ago talking about owning it, and he is here to talk more about owning it. How you doing today, Royce?
I am doing great, John. I'm just excited about being here. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Now, I know a couple weeks ago we talked about owning it, which tickets are still on sale, by the way. So make sure you register because you want to get in on that, especially if you want to know how to own a house because you want to own a house because that is wealth building. And actually, that's what we're talking about today specifically is wealth building. Right, Royce?
Absolutely. There is that's a topic of discussion every single day. How we build wealth. How do we find ways to position ourselves where we're stronger and better financially?
So let me ask you a question. By owning a house, how do you build wealth?
So let's look at it this way. So when you talk about owning a home, actually owning the home, you actually have something real that you are possessing, and you can use that investment that you've made to potentially do other things. So let's say you're looking at you're purchasing a home. You go ahead and you purchase that home, but then you need some repairs on that home. The value of that home, you can use the value of that home to then make repairs on the home without having to go and try to find additional income to draw from. You can draw on the income that your home produces out of that. In most cases, a home will actually appreciate in value, which means it goes up in value. Not every situation, but in most cases, it over time it will appreciate in value. When I buy an automobile, the moment I drive that car off the lot, you're talking about depreciation of anywhere from 5 to 7% just when I drive it off the lot. And over time, it begins to go down in value. No one sells a car for a higher value later than what it was when they purchased it, unless you've got something unique or something like that. But so for a home, you actually are creating what they call equity or ownership within your own personal balance sheet around where you are financially. So it positions you in an area of strength, and you can even pass that down to the next generation if you choose to. And the value behind that home still is maintained even as you have passed it on to those loved ones or others that you may want to want to share that gift to.
I also want to ask, obviously, owning a home is like a lot of responsibility. It's like one of the major milestones of your life. So, how can you get the most money out of it?
When you think about home ownership, you don't just live in the house. Over time, there are things that need to be done to the house. There are things that you want to do to enhance the value of the home. There's things that you want to do to make sure that the home that you have invested in and you're living in, that it still represents a money making opportunity for you. So I try to what I advise people to do is when you're in your home, make your home look like and feel like the way you want to be. So if you want purple walls in every room of your house, great. If you want gold trim on furnishings, fantastic. If that's what you like. However, if you intend to sell that house at some point in time, that's probably not going to be something where the value that you're going to get any value out of it. Yeah, personally, yeah, you get the value because it's what you wanted and you've decorated the way you want it. But the next person may not like that. So what you have to do is over time, you have to make adjustments. You have to make improvements to the home that ultimately lend value back to the home in case you intend to sell it at some point in time. In the areas where you get the most value out of your investment back in, and you're going to make some improvements. That's in the kitchens and in your bathrooms. So do you have to have top of the line high end appliances throughout your kitchen? No. But you can't have appliances and things that are not operational and a dated look. So from time to time, you want to put a little money into it. Start making some adjustments. Maybe you want to put a little paint here and there, and pull off maybe the wallpaper that you may have had in a room. Because as things change, taste may change. Bathrooms, I mentioned those as another area. When people walk into a home that they're interested in buying, they look at a bathroom. They want to make sure that it's the fixtures and everything are up to date. They're working, but they also have a nice modern look to them. So you can do that. Now, some people have a little bit more of a historic home, a little bit more of an older feel. You don't want to get too fancy in a home like that. Then you take away the actual character of the home. I used to live in a home that was built in 1920. Absolutely gorgeous home. And fortunately, that the people who lived in the home before we lived in that home didn't go in and rip everything out as some people may do in their homes. They kept the moldings and many of the trims that were original to that time, and that was really appealing to us because we wanted an older home. We didn't want everything absolutely ultra modern. So when you think about investing in the home, think about the character of the home. Think about the investment that you're making and what you're going to spend it on, and then what you ultimately want to do. If you want to ultimately put that home on the market, you got to think along the lines of the buyback. So you want to take care of those things, but also your major systems are important. Your heating and air. You got to make sure those are up to snuff. Those are taken care of. You've maintained them over the years, and you haven't let things just begin to decline. Those are things that are really pretty easy to pick up if you haven't kept those up to par. Your electrical systems are working in operational order and up to code. So those are some things that you can do, John, to preserve the value of what you've invested in, whether you want to stay there long term or whether your intent is to turn that real estate over and sell it on the marketplace. Right now is a great time. If you're selling a home, there's not much on the market, and there's a lot of people who want to get in the market. So if you're already in a home, you're in a pretty good position. But if you're thinking about getting into a homeownership situation, don't keep delaying. Do it when you've spent the time and really thinking about and had conversations with the right people.
Gotcha. That sounds pretty good to me.
Well, let me add this too. When you also talk about building wealth,
Yes.
using a home, especially for African Americans, this has been the number one wealth builder for African Americans over time. Not investing, not owning a business, but actually home ownership has been that thing that has been a mainstay. If you can recall back, when you think about many African Americans, as we had the Great Migration, we actually owned farms, we owned property. We gave those up when we moved up north, and many of those farms that we left, wow, the value on those things, we lost out on that value. Now, if we came and we began to buy property up north, you're probably in a pretty good position. So that value that you build into your own legacy and in your family can start with home ownership. And once you start there, then there's other things that you can do to build wealth, to solidify what you're doing. But home ownership is that path that will help to solidify, in many ways, your generation and potentially other generations to come.
That's good to hear because, as a fellow millennial, I feel like my generation is like really jaded because I hear people say all the time, "Oh, I can't afford a home." It's like it's like I don't have enough money. It's just like I barely have enough money to pay rent and everything. In fact, let me ask you, what would you say to a millennial who says, I can't, not in this economy, I can't afford a home, that sort of thing? What would you tell them?
I would tell them that they are wasting valuable time thinking too long and too much. and when you look at the numbers, and that's what I do. I'm a banker. Um, it's actually cheaper to own a home than it is to rent. You're at the whim of your landlord each year when they decide to, increase the rent. They didn't ask you whether you got a pay increase, did they? Did they ask you whether you had you had other plans for that money? No, they just tell you, we're increasing your rent by $25. We're increasing your rent by $50. Whatever the increase is, you have to absorb that and make that change. Whereas when you're a homeowner, for the most part, your monthly mortgage, your payment stays relatively stable. It's relatively the same. So if you think about maybe the pinch that it may be for you to meet that mortgage in the early years, as you move on and you start earning more money, you're in a better situation, that mortgage becomes even easier for you to absorb month after month, to the extent where you may find, you know what, I think I'm gonna try to pay this thing off early because I'm in a better financial situation. You can't get in a better financial situation that benefits you if you're a renter. It just doesn't work that way. The other part of comparing the cost to renting versus home ownership. So when you think about renting, you actually are making the landlord's mortgage payment with every rent check that you write. So you're making someone's mortgage actually. You're paying someone's mortgage when you actually rent. Whereas when you are a homeowner, you're taking that payment and you are paying yourself. You're building equity into that home. So when you bought it, you had, say, a 20% stake in that home, and every payment that you make, you're moving higher and higher and higher up the scale around the amount of ownership that you have in your property. There is nothing like sitting in your own home with your family, celebrating and having a good time. There's nothing like sitting in your home and knowing that you decorated it the way that you wanted it, or your piece of property that you have on that street means every time you pull up, you're like, that's mine. I own that. I put money into that. And the pride in ownership, there is nothing that can replace that. So for the millennial who is thinking about, yeah, maybe I should wait, I'm not ready. You're never ever going to be a position where you are perfectly ready for anything. I bought my first home. I was 27 years old,
Wow.
um, which I probably could have done something a little earlier, but I just wasn't, wasn't really there. I've been married for 4 years. We were thinking about starting a family and all that. I didn't want, my kids screaming and hollering in an apartment. I didn't want to have to carry diaper bags and strollers and things upstairs in an apartment. I wanted to raise my family in a home. And the first home that we bought, it was not the greatest. It was not the best. In fact, when we bought the home, it had broken windows. We had all kind of issues in that house. But what we did, that home actually brought us closer together as a couple, because we worked on pulling up the carpet and painting a room and talking about how we wanted to decorate certain things, or how we wanted to get rid of certain areas, certain things in the house that we no longer wanted. And so it's those kind of conversations that you then begin to build as you are developing this piece of real estate that you have painstakingly sacrificed to actually invest in. So when you think about investing, it's not just the property, but you're also investing in yourself and in your future. You're actually banking on yourself and saying, you know what, I can do this. I've got enough assurance in my own capabilities that I'm going to do something that then puts more money back in my pocket. That's really what it comes down to.
Okay, well, that was Royce Sutton, everyone. And I want to thank him for all the information he provided about owning it. And this whole show, it was a fascinating discussion all around. I want to thank all of my guests for coming in today. So thank you, Keizayla, for the information about the Health Expo.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to seeing everyone virtually on Saturday.
And thank you, Andrea, and thank you, Wade, for your commentary on this week's stories.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Fantastic program.
And everyone, make sure to register for Owning It, the free home ownership webinar, which will take place this Saturday, April 24th. It's hosted by Royce Sutton, Senior Vice President of Fifth Third Bank. Just search Owning It 2021 on Eventbrite, and you can also find the link to it on all of our social media channels, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. And if you like the stories that we talked about today, make sure you check them out on our website at www.thecincinnatiherald.com. You can also check out our print edition, which is sold at your local Kroger, UDF, Walgreens, Joseph Vet Booksellers, and at select service stations. And you can follow us on our social media channels. Just follow us at the Cincinnati Herald on Facebook. Follow us at Cincy Herald on Twitter and Instagram. Follow us on YouTube. Just search for the Herald TV. And you can also follow us on our TikTok channel. Just search for the Cincinnati Herald. And also, we are now on Spotify, Stitcher Radio, and iHeartRadio. Just search for the Cincinnati Herald Podcast on each of those podcast apps. And remember to get vaccinated, because in the state of Ohio, well, in fact, like in the whole United States, anyone over the age of 16 is now eligible to get a vaccination shot. I'm John Alexander Reese, digital editor of the Cincinnati Herald, and have a good day.